Hello, welcome back to the Snipe Museum of Art. My name's Joe Becker, and I'm honored and privileged to serve as the director. Here at the museum, and indeed here at Notre Dame, sculpture plays a very prominent role. There are works of art in three-dimensional form here at the museum, across the campus, and out in the Charles S. Hayes Family Sculpture Park. I'm standing next to a very important work by the African-American sculptor Becherer. Booker was brought to our attention by Richard Hunt, another extremely important and prominent American sculptor who also sits on our advisory council and whose work is in the collection. She creates works made out of tires. Yes, tires. Things that were discarded, things that were found along the sides of the street, have been transformed into an important work of art. Let's talk about sculpture for just a second. Sculpture can be broken down into many different forms. There are those objects which are carved, things that are made of stone or made of wood. Those things which have been cast, meaning that they've been translated into bronze or another hard material. And more recently, as recent as the early 20th century, those objects which have been fabricated or they have been constructed. And certainly this piece by Becherer fits that third category. Becherer began her career as a social worker. She was extremely interested in the problems and the situations of urban life, especially in New Jersey and in the New York metropolitan area. But she always had a calling to become an artist. And in particular, she was drawn to many of the traditions that were associated with women, such as weaving and sewing. And in an interesting way, that factored into her career as a sculptor. As a young artist, she didn't have much money for materials. So the idea of making something in marble or casting something in bronze was not an option. She began to use found objects, things that were laying across the streets, things that were found in the corners of buildings, things that were discarded, unused in an urban environment. Tires. Very unusual material at this point in time for sculpture. For her, the tires, which were cut, shredded, banged up, were symbols of urban life. And in a sense, it was a symbol of the urban landscape. Remember, she began her career as a social worker. She was very much interested in the fabric of society. She was very much interested in urban communities. So connecting with something like tires, found and transformed, fabricated into something new, made an awful lot of sense. For her, tires also had lots of interesting meaning. On one level, tires were representative of industry and industrial society. They talked about not just an urban America, but they talked about an industrial America. Related, because these were tires that she found laying in the streets, laying in the corners of buildings. It said something about reuse and recycling. It said something about the use of found objects and the creative ability to transform something into a new form, something given a new life. However, the tires also had another meaning. For her, she calls out the fact that most of us seem to recognize a certain uniformity in the color and the shape and the texture of tires. We simply see them as brown, and we simply see them as dark. We see them as of the same texture. But the realities of the situation is that tires were all different. Different treads, different thicknesses, even different shades of black. Some tended to be much more of a gray-black, some of them tended to be much more of a blue-black. For Booker, who is an African American, there was a connection to identity and the fact that she said oftentimes we tend to read cultures like African American culture as being uniform. But yet, like the tires, it represents all different types of individuals, different people, different shapes, different sizes, different interests. So there's this connection to her heritage in the use of this work in a very subtle way. There's also a connection to, as I said earlier on, her interest in the kinds of art forms that were traditionally associated with women: weaving, sewing. And in fact, although the tires that are used in this have been cut, they have been woven together to form this large organic surface, one that seems to move before our very eyes. In end, she's created something that seems to have a brand new life. She's created something that seems to move forward before our very eyes. We look at the individual pieces, we concentrate on the whole, but when we look at the individual pieces, we begin to see the differences in shape, in texture, in color, in pattern. And we begin to realize that something like latent emissions has an interesting connection to humanity at large. Josiah Booker is perhaps one of the most intriguing contemporary sculptors in our permanent collection. We're grateful to Richard Hunt for introducing her to us, and we're grateful for this opportunity to showcase this work in this brief video. Next time you're at the museum, come up to the second floor and enjoy it firsthand. Thank you very much.